Welcome to part 2 of this tutorial for Battlegrounds Gaming Engine. We're going to pick up right where we left off before. It's now time to add the rule book into the game conversion. And I've prepared a PNG graphic of each of the 14 pages of the rule book. We're going to import them as a multi-token component. I simply select the folder where I'm keeping the rules. There's my 14 graphics. I'm going to create the token, and all the artwork gets automatically imported. You'll see that it looks a bit funny. That's because anti-aliasing needs to be enabled. Otherwise, anything that's true white becomes transparent. You'll see that the tokens are not in the proper order. They're more in alphabetical order. So we need to get them in the proper order. First, we'll turn on the portrait for that. To get them in the proper order, we're going to split this into multiple units. Let's fan these out and arrange them in sequential order. Here, that's exactly what I've done. They're in order 1 through 14. I'm selecting each of them in turn. And then I click on the very first one and merge it into a multi-token component again. This time it puts them in the order that I selected them, so you can see that they're now in proper sequence. I'm going to position the rule book underneath the Battlegrounds button, but it's too big for what I want, so I want to resize it. Now, the easiest way to resize a multi-token component is to host a game session so that you get access to the chat window. The chat window enables you to issue certain commands for, in this case, for resizing a component. So I select the component that I want to tweak, and in the chat window I'm going to type resize all as one word equals, and then the size in percent that I want the component to be, in this case 12%. Resize all is useful because it affects every token in the component. Now here I'm paging through with the hotkeys, paging through all the pages of the rule book. I'll leave it set to page 1. I'm going to close the chat window because I don't need it anymore. Position this rule book where I want it. And I no longer need to host a game session, so I'll just disconnect. Now if I zoom out and pan the map around, you'll see that the rulebook moves right along with everything else. That's not what I want. I want to make this a free-floating object, free-floating component, and now that it's free-floating, it's going to stay exactly where I position it, even as I pan around or change the zoom level. Now I'm going to look for a good position and zoom level to set the default view for this game, the overview. I can tweak the zoom level precisely via menus. Now if you don't know what your current zoom level is, you can easily just zoom in and then back out. It shows you the current zoom level is 29%. With the control key down, if I press on a view button, it changes to set view. This opens the view manager panel. I'm going to call this first view the overview, and the zoom level for it should be 29%. Now it's been relabeled in the view palette. And to show you how that works, I'm going to zoom in, pan around, and then when I click on the overview button, I'm taken right back to the view that I had defined. Very handy for switching multiple viewpoints of your game table. Now let's look for, let's try and set a good view for when we're working with the battlefield cards. I want to zoom those in. Keep them more or less in the center of the screen vertically. just checking that when I mouse over each of the battlefields that the magnified view in the upper right doesn't cover up what I'm trying to look at. So 99% zoom, actually might as well make that an even 100%. If I double click on the map, go to zoom level, I can pick the exact zoom level I want, 100%. So now we're going to set view 1. We'll call it battlefield locations. The zoom level is 100%. Click OK, and it's been relabeled on the view palette. And I can easily toggle back and forth between the views that I've defined. Now that that's done, let's define a view for where the Marine player is going to position his hand of cards. I'm going to pull some cards off the deck, turn snap to grid back on. I'm going to position some dummy cards where I expect the Marine player is going to hold his cards during play. I believe you can have up to 7 cards at once. So I'm going to select all of these and flip them over just to get an idea of what a sample hand might look like. And ideally I want to zoom in as much as possible on this area, the corner of the table, and I want to make sure that the magnified view doesn't cover up any of the cards. And the views palette shouldn't obscure the cards either. Well, that looks pretty good. That's too much. Alright, let's set view 2. We'll call it Marine Hand. 140% zoom. Now let's do the same thing for the Aliens player. Set the zoom to 140% once again. Look for a position where the magnified view doesn't cover the cards and the views palette doesn't cover the cards. Now I'm going to set view 3. We'll call this Alien Hand. It's also 140% zoom. Click OK. We've now got our 4th view defined. Now let's define a view for the character cards. I want to make sure they all fit vertically on the screen. Give the cards a bit of breathing room. And we're going to set view 4, call it character cards. Set the zoom level to 63%. And that's really all the views we need. So now if you type in a space for the name of each view that you don't need, it's going to take it off of the view palette. So now we just have one row of 5 buttons to switch views with. And you can also use hotkeys to change a view if you don't want to use the view palette itself. Now let's go ahead and save our progress so far, save the game file. Now I go back to the overview, and whoops, I forgot to put all my cards away. Let me stack these up, flip them over with a hotkey, drag them back to the Marine deck, and shuffle the deck. And now I'm going to save the game file again. Okay, now we want to use the turn sequencer. We'll open that up. We're going to make some custom settings. Click on the configure button. That opens up the turn sequencer setup wizard. And it's just a matter of filling in each question. Now we define some values that we want to track. And really I just need to set up a couple of dummy values. I'm just going to set up a couple of dummy values that aren't really going to be used for sequencing, but I need to be able to bypass this screen. We'll call the values team and sequence. So now we can continue because we have at least 2 values to track. So team and sequence are our sequencing parameters. We want to break our game up into turn phases. A phase is called a phase. There are 6 phases in a turn. And yes, they do have names. Let's begin naming them. First phase is advance the turn marker. Second phase is called draw cards for the Marines. Third phase is play cards, Marines. Fourth phase is called draw cards, Alien. Fifth phase is called play cards, Aliens. And finally, the attack phase, which is for the Aliens. So those are our 6 phases in a turn. Click on continue. And actually, for this phase chart, I'm just going to make up a couple of dummy entries, really just to bypass the screen because we don't need it. So I'll say that units that are on the Marine team get to act on phase 1. And units on the Aliens team get to act on phase 2. This isn't really going to happen. I just want to be able to continue here. And finally, we're going to name the turn sequencer settings file. We'll call it aliens TTIW. For this time it's war. And now we can see our 6 phases. They're in green because they haven't happened yet. And as you step through the turn sequencer, each phase gets moved to the bottom of the stack. And it's now the next turn. And everything resets to green. So we'll reset everything back to turn 1 and close the turn sequencer. Save our game file again. Now by default, Battlegrounds includes a couple of features. One is measure move and the other is measure range. And they let you measure the move and measure the range. But this game doesn't use any measuring whatsoever. So we're going to go into board settings and we're going to set the unit of measure to 0. And now those features, the measure move and measure range feature, have disappeared. We don't need them, so we get rid of the clutter. Now you see how the battlefield cards can easily get dragged, perhaps by mistake. What we're going to do is open up the unit manager and set each of our 5 battlefield cards to locked so that you can't, no matter how you click and drag them or try and select them, you can't move them or select them anymore. You can still move the glass bead on top of the card. That's independent. Save our game again. So now our game is basically finished and it's time to export the game media so that we can prepare it all for distribution to other players. I don't want to password protect this file, so I'm just going to click on export. And we have to wait a few moments as it puts all of the graphic media into a self-contained bundle. An encrypted bundle at that. And there, the export is complete. It tells you where it's located. So let's just minimize Battlegrounds and look in our game media bundles directory. And there it is. That's the file we just created. Let's move our window over. I'm going to create a new folder on the desktop called Aliens TTIW for BGE. This is going to be where I put everything that's going to get distributed for this game. I want to have both windows side by side. I created some brief instructions and description about the game. We had a little README file basically. So that'll be the first thing I copy over. I'm going to make another folder. Call this one Put Contents in Game Files folder. Go into my game files directory, copy my BGE game file, and paste it in here. Now I'm going to make another folder. We'll call this Put Contents in Game Media Bundles folder. Now we need to look for the game media bundle. It's in here, just copy it and paste it. This is the largest file of the whole set at 44.7 megabytes. That includes the graphic for the game table and the cards and everything, the tokens. make one more folder. We'll call this Put Contents in Turn Sequencer Settings folder. Got to fix a little typo there. And let's look in the Preferences folder. There's a Turn Sequencer Settings, and there's the one that we made. Copy that, paste it in here. And that is basically everything I need to distribute this game. I'll close the window, select the folder, right click on it, and basically I want to send this to compressed folder, make a zip file out of this, out of the whole directory. Let's minimize that. There we can see the zip file that was just created. This is zipped down to 34.5 megabytes, and it's ready to distribute. So that's basically it. That's how you make a game conversion from start to finish using Battlegrounds Gaming Engine. I hope this video tutorial will inspire a lot of you to start porting your own favorite games to Battlegrounds Gaming Engine. And good luck, and thank you very much for watching.